end of this tactical segment, the gudgeon is at 7 stress, which is the maximum it can have before it's considered unfit and can't do anything else but return to port. So I intend to play this pretty aggressively because regardless what happens, I'm pretty sure we'll suffer at the very least some stress. Now I'm not going to go in with my guns blazing on the surface, but I'm going to sneak in and try to sink as many merchant vessels as I can while I still can, and then hope that the Tautog can score some victories as well to get a good victory or a good campaign result out of this. Let's see how it goes. Now the first step of the tactical segment takes place on the operational map, and that's going to be contact checks for any submarine that's not in the searched box or not unfit. So the gudgeon is going to get to make a contact check, and we roll a die and consult this table here to see how many contacts we made. Your check is modified. There's a -3 if you moved into the region that turn, and we have a +2 for our intel counter. The gudgeon has the searcher skill, so she gets a +1 to the roll, so this would just be a straight die roll. There's also an ultra counter that can come up from event cards that represents traffic intercept back at Pearl Harbor that's relayed, like we were talking about with the I-73. So we're going to roll the die. That's a 6. That's going to give us 2 contacts. So we're going to place the contact counter on this board to represent that there are 2 contacts made for that. And then we are going to draw a convoy card for that first contact. And it's going to tell us how many ships are there. Now this is a merchant contact. There are 2 escorts and 4 merchants. Now at this stage, we can decide whether or not we want to engage this convoy. And of course, we do want to engage this convoy. We are hunting. So we're going to replace the 2 counter with a 1, which means there's 1 contact remaining if we want to look into that. And we are going to switch to the tactical map now. Now, once we've gotten the tactical map out, we're going to place these unknown ship counters representing that diagram from the card. So we have 2 escorts and 4 merchant vessels. At this point, we're just using the generic tokens because we're not sure what those ships are. And then we get to place our submarine on the map. So we're going to place the gudgeon here, submerged. We can come in any of the long-range areas. And then the next thing we're going to do is look at the top card of the convoy deck. The bottom half of the card has text on it that affects this encounter. We ignore what kind of context there are and see what it is. This says propaganda. We gain 2 additional VPs if we sink all of these merchant ships. So that's something to keep in mind. And then the next step is the lag movement step. And this is a neat little nuance rule that represents the differences in speed of the ships. I should note that I need to move my ship, though, before I do lag movement. So I'm going to move here. And when a submarine is in range 0, 1, or 2 of another ship, then I get to reveal that ship. And so what I do reveal is this one here, and that escort. So that ship there, that top one is the Peking Maru. We draw a merchant card for it. The bottom one is the Sirogane Maru. And then the top escort there on the top right is the Eterofu. And it's an escort. And we're going to replace those counters with those actual ship counters. So we place the Eterofu here. We place the Peking Maru here. And we place the Sirogane Maru here. And then we're going to perform lag movement. What you do when that happens is you pick the ship, the enemy ship with the highest speed, and then you're going to adjust all the other ships relative to its speed. Any ship that's got a lower speed rating is going to move back equal to the distance. And so the gudgeon is going to drift back 1 from the convoy. And that's going to put me here in 0, 1, or 2, the Sirogane Maru. I do not get to reveal that ship yet. Now, I have the aggressive skill for initiative on the gudgeon, which means the gudgeon can attack before the escorts do their thing. And I think I'm going to. It's similar to fast and slow in like IAF leader or Corsair leader. But it's going to let me make my attacks before anybody else does anything. Now I can attack as many targets as I want out to a range of 3 with my torpedoes. I have 10 ready torpedoes. And I can assign as many torpedoes as I want to each target within that amount. Now the submarines, the first mission when they left Pearl Harbor, were under orders not to use more than two torpedoes against a target, which was really interesting because submarine doctrine at the time was to use 3 to fire 1 at the front of the ship, 1 amidship, and 1 to the rear. In case your calculations were off based on speed or whatnot, you'd still get at least 1 strike, hopefully 2. But there was a shortage of submarines, so they were ordered to use 2, no more than 2 against a target. Of course, those orders weren't always followed, and that was written up in some of Rear Admiral Withers' recommendations as to things the captains could have done differently. So I'm going to play it historically again, and I'm going to fire two torpedoes at the Peking Maru. I'm going to fire 2 torpedoes at the Sirigane Maru. That's the Sirigane, that's the Peking. And I can attack that Escort if I want as well. I have 6 torpedoes left. The Escort doesn't give me any victory points, but it gives me 1 experience point. And more importantly, if I can sink it, it's not going to come try to sink me. So I am going to fire 2 torpedoes at it. Now there's a table that you roll based on your torpedoes, or for your torpedo attacks, that's going to affect whether or not you get to hit or not. It represents the issues that they had with the torpedoes, with their targeting computers, the whole 9 yards. So for each spread of torpedoes, I'm going to roll a die. So let's start with an Eturofu. I roll that die and I get a 3. On a 2 to 3, all torpedoes automatically miss. However, it does not alert the convoy that I'm here. So for the Peking Maru, I get a 4. 1 torpedo runs correctly. All the others miss. If there's more than 1 torpedo, I'm going to roll another die. And if I get a 1, that other torpedo is going to circle around back on me and attack me. That is something that happened to 2 different submarines. I believe the USS Tang was one of them. I get a 7, so I'm good. So 1 hit there. So we'll flip that over to represent 1 hit on the Peking Maru. And then firing those 2 at the Sirigane Maru, we're rolling the same table again. And a 1 is all torpedoes automatically miss, and 1 prematurely explodes. And what that means is we're going to place an alerted counter. So now when they detect me, they're going to get a bonus to detection. However, we did get that 1 hit on the Peking Maru. You can see that that card has the torpedo listed down at the bottom. Those are the numbers that I need on the D10 to either do a light damage, a heavy damage, or sink the Peking Maru. So I roll the D10, and I get to add my torpedo skill, which in my current shaken status is 0. So I'm going to roll the die, and I'm going to subtract 1 for each range beyond 0. So I'm going to roll the die and subtract 2 to see what happens to the Peking Maru. I got a 3, which would be light damage, except I'm subtracting 2, so it's a 1, so I do not hit the Peking Maru. So now I have to go through Escort detection, which is what happens next. And when the Escorts try to detect, they have a value that they roll against. You can see that on the Eturofu, where it would detect a surface submarine on a 4 or a submerged submarine on a 6. I'm submerged. Now this alerted counter means that the range that they can detect me at increases by each alerted counter. So normally they could detect a submerged submarine at 1 or 2. When there's an alerted counter, they can detect it at, 0 or 1. They can detect at 0, 1, or 2. So that does get to try to detect me. And the alerted counter is going to give them a +1 to their roll. So if I roll the die and it's a 5 or better, that ship is going to detect me. It is a 6. They do detect me. So now they're going to attempt to depth charge me if they can move toward me. Now they have a move of 2. The next step is the Escort movement step. This ship is going to detect me. They have detected me, rather. Let's go ahead and put that there so there's no doubt about it. And they're going to try to detect, they're going to try to sink me. This one is going to move 1, 2 toward me, because once I'm detected by all the ships. And at this point, I could reveal that escort, but let's see what happens here first. Now, I have a couple of options when that happens, and I get to use them because I am an aggressive submarine. I've already made my attack, so there'll be no penalty for not getting to attack if I don't do that. Now, the evasion option that's available for a submerged submarine is it can deep dive. And when you deep dive, you add 2 stress to the submarine, but you don't draw any hit tokens for that submarine. Now, when the Eterofu, it says on its card there, when it attacks a submerged submarine, I would draw 2 heavy hit cards. If I deep dive, I'm going to suffer 2 stress and possibly flooding, which is like temporary hull damage. But I won't draw any counters. If I suffer 2 stress, I'm going to be unfit. I don't want to be unfit, so I am going to take my chances with the hit counters because I want to sink at least 1 merchant vessel before this submarine's done. So I draw the heavy hit counters. I take lasting electrical damage, and I suffer 1 flooding. I don't suffer any stress, so that's good. I can continue in the next turn. Now remember, I'm aggressive, so I'm going to get to go before the escorts. So I've been detected. They're alerted to my presence. I get to move as the next turn starts, and I am going to move here. Now I could not move and make a silent running check, and in order to do that, I would potentially lose that detected token. Maybe I do want to do that. I don't know if I can attack while I'm also silent running. I cannot attack when I'm making a silent running attempt. But to make a silent running attempt, I would roll the die and check. I would make 0 movement, roll the die, and if it's equal to or less than my evasion rating, I would remove that detected counter. But I'm going to take my chances with it. So now the gudgeon is here. I have fired 6 torpedoes, so I still have 2 ready torpedoes. I am going to again fire 2 at the Peking Maru, and then I'm going to fire 2 at the Sirigane Maru. We'll roll on that same table to check the results of the subs, or the submarine torpedoes, before we determine whether or not they hit. So for these against the Peking Maru, we're going to roll. We get an 8. That says half the torpedoes run correctly, so 1 runs correctly. And then against the Sirigane Maru, we get a 10, and that means all of them run correctly, and we're going to resolve the attack as normal. So against the Sirigane, or against the Peking Maru, we're at a range of 2. We're going to subtract 2 from our die roll, and to sink the Peking Maru, we need a 7. So we need to roll a 9 to sink it. We got a 10. So we sink the Peking Maru, and we score 2 victory points. And we're going to mark that on our campaign log sheet. Now, 2 torpedoes are hitting the Sirigane Maru. You get a modifier when you fire a spread and more than 1 torpedo in the spread are hitting. You get a modifier for each torpedo in the spread greater than 1. So because there are 2, I get a +1 modifier to my attack roll. If there were 3, I'd get a +2 modifier. And I'm going to roll that for each torpedo. So the first torpedo I'm going to roll, I will not subtract -1 because I have a +1 from the spread. So I get a 9. And as you can see, a 9 will sink the Sirigane Maru. I'm really glad I didn't deep dive. So now there's still 1 torpedo left to hit, but it doesn't matter because the 9 from the 1 will sink it. We score 1 more victory point. So if you're keeping track, which I am, for the campaign, we have 6 victory points already. That's not enough for a great victory. A great victory is 28. I'm playing a very small submarine lot. I can put as many submarines as I can afford the special option points for. But I just wanted to run with a couple of submarines. So there's the gudgeon, having sunk 2. He's detected. And I put another alerted counter out there because I've attacked for another round. It doesn't really matter because I've already been detected. And now the Eterofu is going, you know what, I'm going to double check. Maybe because I moved, they have to detect me again. Okay, so I am still detected. That's what the silent running would do, would let me avoid being detected. So now we're going to reveal this escort here too, because he's in play. And it is the Shimushu drawn from the escort deck. So we replace this counter with the Shimushu counter. Sometimes they have different speeds, and that's why you want to have the right counter to go with the right submarine or the right ship. So the gudgeon is detected, and the Eterofu can come here and attempt to detect it. Now at this point, I think I do want to deep dive. So I'm going to place the deep dive token, which I almost never use, so I have to look for it. There it is. So when I roll to deep dive, I'm not going to draw any counters for the Eterofu to damage me. Instead, I'm going to roll a die. I'm going to add 2 stress, so that is going to take my stress rating to 9. So now we're unfit. That's okay, we just want to get out of here at this point. I'm going to roll a die, and if the die roll is equal to or less than my evasion rating, nothing happens. That is my evasion rating, so there's no effect. But I have to roll twice, as per the deep dive token. That is a 7, so I'm going to put another flooding counter on there. Flooding is temporary damage. However, I already have 1 hull damage, and I have 2 flooding damage. My hull is 3, so that's actually going to sink the gudgeon. So the gudgeon did not get away, though he tried everything he could. We did sink 3 ships. He did get 3 experience points and 3 victory points. Unfortunately, when we wrap up the campaign, we're going to lose 3 victory points for each submarine that was sunk. So the Tautog has a lot of work to do out there with his reduced torpedo load on the way back to Pearl Harbor to come out with a decent result. But that's how the submarine phase, or the tactical phase, works. We're going to clean this up. We'll go back to the operations map and see what happens to the Tautog. So clearly that didn't go the way that I wanted it to. The poor gudgeon scored just enough victory points to make up for what it's going to cost me having lost the vessel. Fortunately, as I finished the campaign out, the Tautog was able to sink, I believe, 3, including a lone merchant that was worth 5 victory points. So I wound up with a poor result, which is better than a dismal result. But that's okay. Sometimes that's the way the game goes. And we got to see a lot of the different rules in play there, and I hope that helped clear up the tactical phase. Now, the next couple of episodes, maybe the next 3 episodes of Immediate Arrest, are going to focus on Warfighter. And Warfighter's a great game. It's not a hard game to play, but I want to do a series of videos on it because we're going to play, first of all, we're going to use the new Warfighter Core Rulebook that's coming with the Pacific Warfighter base set, the Kickstarter that'll be shipping in March, I believe. And we may even want to add 1 or 2 of the new Warfighter decks as well, so we can take advantage of the rules for airborne, shore landings. There are fortification rules, and we're going to look into that. We're going to delve deep. We're going to play a campaign, or we're going to play a mission. We'll probably do an airborne mission from Operation Market Garden from the new scenario books, and I definitely want to try a shore assault similar to Operation Overlord. So I hope you'll tune in to watch that, and I thank you for watching. If you liked what you saw, please let me know. If there's something you'd like to see, by all means, please let me know. And if you didn't like it, let me know that as well. I'm always looking to improve. Once again, thanks for watching, and we'll hope to see you next time.